Welcome, everyone. My name is Lauren Postler, and I'm serving as Managing Director of the Collective MediaTech Incubator. Excited to have with me this afternoon John Zozzaro and Paul O'Brien, founders of MediaTech Ventures. And, whereas Collective is my passion in supporting entrepreneurs, both Paul and John had a much larger vision. So, Paul, tell us about that larger vision and the birth of MediaTech Ventures.
Good to see you. Collective is probably the right way to think about it. That when we got together years ago to think about how best to help entrepreneurs and startups in general, what we got very passionate about first was the idea that being a founder is a very isolated experience, and finding your peer group in a way that is actually meaningful, not just neighbors in your local startup community, but finding folks that actually get it and are going through the same thing and are passionate about the same space is incredibly difficult. And there's no reason for it to be so difficult. So the big picture of MediaTech Ventures actually wasn't that much grander. Honestly, it was rather simple. At least in our minds, it was rather simple. It was this question of how do you build an ecosystem? How do you build a community that actually has a meaningful impact on being a creative entrepreneur, being a media founder?
Yes.
Doing something highly risky like developing technology in this space. So yes, we do a few things. Collective is the incubator where we work with a lot of mentors and great partners to teach and work with startup founders like those that are paying attention now. Right? But then we started to ask these questions about what else does it mean to actually be meaningful to everybody, to those startup founders. We work very closely with the venture capital community.
Yes.
We get to know a lot of the angel investors. We consult for in the sense of providing insight to and research to and deal flow to the venture capital ecosystem.
Yes.
We work very closely with different cities and even different countries on the fact that this kind of industry is very regional. It's very localized, right? If you're not based in LA, how do you effectively build a film tech or music tech kind of company? Well, you can in fact do that anywhere in the world. Find those similar peers and those partners and those companies where you live. And so we help do that with the city of Austin, for example, or the country of Korea, where we focus their attention on this industry in this space in particular. We're innovators ourselves. We have a head of technology. We've got some data scientists that work with us. We're building infrastructure to help make your job easier. We're building community platforms and learning management systems, things that enable us and enable you to work together more closely, enable you to manage the documents and the process that you go through as you're starting a company, but also so that for the foreseeable future, as long as you want to remain a part of the media industry, you're part of the community. You're actually now into something with us. And then we're even looking at real estate. To be honest, we're looking at how when we get through the circumstances that we're in 2020, 2021, we have places that are meaningful, that you can spend time with us in different parts of the world. Whether those are through our partners or directly in some of the things we're doing, right? We're looking at the fact that to be a successful entrepreneur is not just getting a startup off the ground. It's not just funding. It's not just knowing what and how to do, but it's how do we connect with everybody else? How do we find and invest together in what we're doing here, wherever here might be? And how do we leverage the same kind of technology? How do we leverage the same kind of innovations on behalf of one another so we can do that? And then, to what extent can we help draw the attention of investors on all that we're doing so that that's a little bit easier for you as a startup founder?
Well, Paul,
I do really quick, actually, I want to kind of summarize those points because I think they're really important. At the end of the day, there's 5 pillars to developing any industry. And the 5 that we focus on is network. You need to know all the people, right? So who are all the people in media? and what do they do, and how do they operate, and where are they? Number two is education. So they need to be educated, hence why Collective is a program within our infrastructure and within our economic framework. Number three is real estate or spaces and studios, right? So that's definitely the consideration that we have for developing real estate and looking at spaces all over the world, and how they're effective for the creative and media communities. Number four is then platforms, right? Every industry has a common language, common technology to help it thrive, right? Manufacturing and distributions with ERPs, and it's really CMSs and CRMs. It's really just kind of bringing all that together. How do we kind of democratize that information from like a Linux Foundation or the IETF, but for media and creative tech in particular? And then number five is what Paul alluded to at the end there. How do we help promote it? How do we help amplify it? Promotions, kind of like how Hollywood, right, wouldn't really exist without the Hollywood Reporter, without the Oscars, things that kind of perpetuate the industry beyond itself. And so those are the five pillars that kind of create the economic infrastructure that we have. And underneath that, we have technology and a lot of other resources. So beyond the program, that's really what you're kind of entering into, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, look, you're endeavoring in the most difficult and challenging field you could possibly consider, right? Being a startup founder. We won't cite the numbers about how risky and how challenging that is. What we're really here to do, and what we really fundamentally care about, is it shouldn't be that difficult. And so let's put some things together, put some things in place that make it so that it's frankly just not difficult. That your chances of being successful as a startup founder are much greater, not just now as you start to work with us, but even in the future, right? We're going to be in this sector together for the rest of our lives in most cases. If you're into video games, or you're in the advertising industry, odds are you're going to be there for the rest of your career. Let's just keep working on that together and find success along the way.
So to confirm, Paul, you and John spoke about 5 pillars. You spoke about all of the elements, and Paul, bringing those together are the ways that we feel we can help support entrepreneurs who are starting, launching, growing, and scaling media technology companies.
Yeah, it's a great confirmation. I would even challenge the wording a little bit, that it's not really how we feel that this works. We know the collective we on our side. Yeah, we've been doing this for a long time. We got folks based in LA. I spent too long in Silicon Valley. We even dabble in and work with and support some other programs purposefully. That we've seen enough startups in our past that we finally got together as a company, as MediaTech Ventures, recognizing that all of our own collective experiences with entrepreneurship and startups and innovation and venture capital, you keep running into the same issues and same problems that people have, time and time again. And so rather than encouraging everybody to just keep trying to figure it out, to just read blog posts and we're here to mentor you. Now, rather than doing that, why not solve those challenges that people keep running into?
Yes.
And so here we are to fix the fact that there are a lot of things that you absolutely don't need to and shouldn't struggle with as a startup founder, especially when it comes to the media business in particular, where we all have different experiences that can contribute to our collective success. Let's do that.
Well, and speaking to our collective experience and our collective success, John, one of the barriers that we identified early on was an incubator and later an accelerator and venture studio that could walk hand in hand with these entrepreneurs and founders in their journey. So tell us a little bit about how Collective came to be.
Yeah, Collective was born out of necessity and early stage development for media and creative technology entrepreneurs. And it was born out of necessity because a lot of us at MediaTech Ventures have been mentoring for a long time, and various other programs, your other incubators, other accelerators, commercialization programs, institutional programs, education programs, the latter pretty much. And Impact Hub had a workforce development accelerator. And Paul and I, we kind of thought a little bit about what we were doing in the education part of our infrastructure at the time, I guess framework more than infrastructure, and decided that it would be a really good opportunity for us to sit down with a lot of folks in the economic development arms of Austin, which is where it was birthed, and really understand how in an era of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right, where we're really trying to bring a lot of these conversations and topics to light and ensure that we are creating a lot more opportunities for everybody out there. Why aren't we talking about the creative class? And we found it fascinating that nobody else was focused on it. So we applied, we got in, and out of the Impact Hub Workforce Development Accelerator, we birthed Collective. And so we had our first cohort at the beginning of 2019.
And, it's been quite a journey since then, globally. And, fast forward to us having conversations about how my work in the education space and background as a social worker can contribute to developing this educational framework, a curriculum, and then a support for this workforce development arm of MediaTech Ventures. And I'll share, my background is not in media. It is not in entertainment in any way. I've worked tangentially with tech startups and a number of tech startups, but my passion is for impact. So the fact that this was birthed out of the Impact Hub Accelerator, really resonated with me. And then really, though, it was that underpinning narrative of why Collective, and that our shared collective experience as members of an increasingly global community is defined by the stories we share with each other. And in talking with y'all, I recognized that today our modern storytelling is enhanced and facilitated by media technology. So at Collective, we're dedicated to empowering our world's most brilliant storytellers, and that's most of us, by fueling the creative and iterative process of innovation in media technology development. So while technology will power the ability of these companies to scale globally, our first priority is not a minimally viable product, but instead an in-depth understanding of the market, the constituents, and the stakeholders that these companies seek to serve, that these founders want to support. So, John and Paul, when we think about Collective and that collective experience, that end goal in our process going through the Collective Incubator is not to validate founders' assumptions, but rather support them through the process of ideation and discovery to find the truth. And we've talked a lot about truth in media and truth in storytelling, especially in this past year. Yeah, especially lately. And, we feel strongly that the end goal of all media technology is to improve our ability to share stories and connect in order to more fully embrace that collective experience that brings us together.
I love the way you said that, because you like, unlike Paul and I, you sound like you actually work for a college. So very, very, very institutional description there. But yeah, hey, look, at the end of the day, we're very different in that if you took away what we do professionally in media, we are in the industry of entrepreneurship innovation. We all just happen to be media professionals, right? And Lauren, obviously, you with your background, bringing fresh eyes, impact eyes, and especially your background in social work, continues to double down on kind of our impact focus as an organization as well. But the differentiators are pretty vastly different from what we've seen. A lot of programs, commercialization programs, a lot of other incubators and accelerators tend to focus on things from a hierarchy standpoint that just don't make any sense, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, we really need to find out first if anybody's going to pay you for your idea that you have, and what that may or may not look like before you start putting business models and plans and other things together. So what you'll find comfort in is, with over 100 years of media and marketing experience that we have, MediaTech Ventures, we've put together a proprietary curriculum that's really dedicated to ensure that you do take the right steps. So by the end of the program, you are confident in what it is that you're building, who you're building it with. You can get anybody excited about what you're building, which is important, because if you can't even get me excited about what you're building, I'm not going to buy from you. I'm not going to invest in you. And chances are I'm not going to partner with you. And those are really important. So it doesn't matter who you're talking to. By the end of the program, you'll be able to get anybody excited about what it is that you're doing. And if you can't, well, then, we failed you. But chances are, if you do go through the all 12 weeks and you graduate, you will be able to get anybody excited about what you're doing.
Well, and I like that you mentioned, making sure that we are able to empower these founders to get people excited about their product, because, for all my talking about truth and impact, we recognize that we can prioritize the larger purpose without sacrificing profit. And that means that you, John, Paul, and our team of teachers, mentors, and advisors are bringing your decades of experience that demonstrate that revenue will follow if your understanding of the market comes first, right?
There was really a wonderful series of discussions over the past year about trying to understand what impact investing means.
Yeah.
Or trying to understand what conscious capitalism means. And I love, Lauren, I love your background, because your background being different is exactly why you're with us. That we have that very focused, maybe just startup, explicitly kind of startup and raise money kind of experience and perspective, and a lot of us are in the media business. But it was that evolution of what we built through Impact Hub on workforce development. Yes. That to be frank, as we started in those relationships and those kind of conversations, people would look at us and go, "No, wait a minute, this is about workforce development. What are you guys doing?" The single greatest contributor to new jobs in every company, in every country, is startups and new businesses.
Yes.
That the greatest path to determining your success as a startup founder, to validating your success as a startup founder, the greatest path to bringing the economy back together, to lifting economic gaps and closing economic gaps in a country, any country, is creating new businesses.
Yes.
And in the media space in particular, it strikes us all that's much more important.
Yes.
Because now we're including artists and filmmakers and musicians, right? We're including a substantial class of the economy that is our culture, that defines our culture.
Yes.
And as we all know, that career path is particularly challenging, right? to get found, to get signed, to make money. And so what can we do to help you, to help us all create companies that make that easier? Create companies that put people to work. That really was the first question, right? In order to validate that anybody's going to pay you for your thing, so that you can start to hire people, so that you can start to build a business that's actually going to be successful, put people to work, and start to grow. And yes, by extension of that, get it funded if that's appropriate, or raise a grant if that's appropriate. Right? There are a lot of different ways that we put businesses together. Those are the gaps that I was talking about as we started the conversation. Can we eliminate? Can we close the gaps on the things that shouldn't be so difficult?
Yes.
So that you, in starting something and bringing a new idea to life, in taking on this risk of being an entrepreneur, you do not take on as much of that challenge as has historically been the case. Right? How do we do it together?
Well, two things that I want to touch on. We've mentioned media, so I want to define media. We've also mentioned the creative class. John, you're a former musician. Like, this, you've lived it, and you understand. Recovering, exactly. I'm a recovering social worker turned fundraiser. You're a recovering musician. So, John, let's talk a little bit about creative class, and then Paul, I want to come back to you for media. So, John, tell me about the creative class.
Richard Florida does an incredible job of explaining in Rise the Creative Class, the kind of the evolution of creativity and the need for it now and in the future. You hear from Mark Cuban to Jack Ma talk about the importance of creativity and how that's going to be one of the most in-demand skill sets in the next century, and they're not lying. At the end of the day, there's these robotics programs and these STEM programs, but you can't be a better computer than a computer. And not long from now, that computer is going to replace you. So what do you do now, right? One of my favorite quotes is, "Art begins at the end of science." And so when it comes to creativity, that's really where it thrives, is to be able to look at data, not just for what it is, but what it can be.
Yes.
And so with that, it's particular skill sets and being able to differentiate between your left and right brain and understand, what it means to create versus means to develop, and what it means to build. So when it comes to creative class, it's kind of this balance of these technologists that also have the creative skill sets. An architect is a perfect example,
Yes.
right? Very technically driven, right? Very math heavy, but also beautiful and elegant in the development of the buildings that they have to design and stuff of that nature. And what we're finding is there's constantly a blur between technology and creatives, or technologists rather, and creatives. And so one of the things that we really stress in our program is we really do help those technologists become creatives and those creatives become technologists, because both of those need to be taken into consideration when developing anything meaningful.
Yes, I love it. So, Paul, back to you to talk about media, because this is kind of a hotly debated topic because the term is used so broadly and in so many different ways, right?
It's a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, what I find fascinating is if you say media in New York City, we'll immediately think news media or advertising, right? That's largely that region of the world and the culture of that region of the world.
Mm-hmm.
You say media in Los Angeles, and it's music industry or film industry, right? That's what media means. You say media in San Jose, California, or San Francisco, it's Facebook, right?
Yep.
You immediately just think social media, and so it's, I don't know if it's the debate obviously is about the implication of social media and news and the things that are going on in the world politically and with technology. But I'm not so sure that the question of what media is actually as elusive as it seems. Media is how we communicate in any form. It's everything you see or everything you hear,
Yes.
whether that's for entertainment or information. Right?
Yes.
And so what does that include? Podcasts and augmented reality, video games, certainly all the things I've listed, news and advertising and the film industry. And what we've discovered, what we've come to believe over our time working with this, is that the greatest challenge to our economy, and the reason we're all debating the implication of this stuff, is it's not the technology that is really the more challenging part of it. It's understanding what the technology is doing with the media, doing
Yes.
to the media.
Yes.
What the simple analogies that I like to share for that is that podcasting is really just used to what we used to call radio. Mm-hmm. And YouTube, right? If you're a heavy YouTube user, it's just what television used to be. Blogging, if you're in content marketing and you're blogging or even doing social media, well, we used to write newspapers and we used to publish books, right? That there's an old version of new. Really, just given the fact that the digital transformation through which our economy is still wrestling, and the implication of the internet has changed the way that we experience media.
Yes.
And so the challenge for startups and founders is quite simply twofold, right? One, let's help you figure that out as quickly as we possibly can, because if you're going to be in this space, let's make sure you are equipped with how to build websites and how to design and podcast if you should podcast, or produce a video if you should produce a video, whatever your means of leveraging the very industry in which we find ourselves. Let's make sure we do that as effectively and efficiently as possible. Number one. Number two, we want to focus on that space, right? So while we're sitting next to the education industry and the sports industry and other sectors, our real focus is on those forms of media: music, film, news, advertising, video games, and so forth, right? That if you're a startup in that space, our mentors, our teachers, our curriculum is all designed to serve that space in particular, that focus in particular.
Yep.
But notice I said sitting next to for a reason. that A lot of our work is derived from Peter Drucker, who decades ago noticed that really the only thing that creates value in a business, in a company, the only things that create value are marketing and innovation. Notice I'm not using our word, marketing and innovation. That's what he said. Marketing to figure out what to do, to figure out who's going to buy it, to figure out what the competitors are so you don't do the wrong things.
Yep.
And then innovation, right? Do something different, do something better. If I were to simplify it. Well, marketing and innovation is just a matter of leveraging media and technology. And so our work together isn't exclusively in podcast technology or music monetization platforms. It's that the education sector, the education space, the political space. If you're in politics, if you're in finance, we've seen some wonderful banking and fintech platforms that are working on ways to manage remote banking with video.
Yes.
That's media in finance, right? That
good example.
That every industry must leverage media and technology or marketing and innovation in some way. That's how the value is created. And so the more that we can enable you to be successful as a new venture in this sector, the more we actually help the entire economy, the more we actually help everybody thrive, because Coca-Cola and Fargo and run down the list, your favorite sports team, they're also desperately in need of media innovations.
Yes.
And enable them to continue to be successful in the companies in the context that they work as well.
So Paul,
mic drop.
Go out on a limb here. I'd say most technology companies are also media companies in this day and age, because they are utilizing media, photos, audio, video, the way we communicate information to our senses in their technology, right?
Hands down. I would go so far as to say not even most. Every business out there must be either technology enabled or tech. Technology enabled. You have, you know it if you've been working somewhere or you started a business before. You have to understand at least how Gmail works, how email works, right? That's tech enabled, yes. And then Lauren,
we're starting.
What's that?
Is that where we're starting the bar with Gmail?
we're going to show you how Gmail works.
Jesus.
But then if you're in the restaurant business, you've experienced this. You've got to be a part of the mobile app for local restaurants. You've got to know how Yelp works, whether or not you like it or don't. it matters. You likely have to have a website. Is your website media? Is your website as effective and capable as it could be, right? That is media. And so indeed, every business and there's some articles and thought leaders and folks working in big companies that are pointing out that yes, every company, every business in the world must be a media and technology company.
Yes. Well, and we've clarified that if you're curious if a MediaTech incubator is the right fit for your startup, the answer is probably yes. So John, tell us a little bit more. We've alluded to the curriculum. We've alluded to why and how we are different in that we focus on the marketing and the innovation, which are critical for your success. But tell us more about, that proprietary curriculum and then maybe some deliverables that a startup could expect going through the program.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, you're going to go through a lot of, and you're going to walk away with answers to questions, which is probably the most important thing that you can do in any program like this. Because if you didn't go through a program like Collective, you're not going to know what questions to ask, and you're not going to know what answers are providing value. And you'll end up going down a path that's potentially either a waste of time or it could have been done much more efficiently. And so I like to tell everybody at the end of the day, we either save you headaches, we definitely save you time, and we help you get you to where you need to be much faster and you leave much better than before you entered the program. And everything that we have developed, we've been very fortunate at MediaTech Ventures to work with startups to Fortune 100 companies. And so, we know what it looks like to go from idea to merger acquisition. We know what it looks like to raise capital. And so with all of that in mind and with our background, we do have a very project-based learning
Yes.
type of environment,
Yes.
because you learn by doing, and you certainly learn by failing. But how do we make sure that you're surrounded? I think the biggest differentiator here is the community, is the industry specificity. There's a lot of other programs that are too general, and frankly, to each his own. But I don't know how you're providing value to 10 different verticals, or multiple different industries. It's just too much. We are very media and creative focused. So all of our mentors, all of our teachers, all of our investor contacts, real estate folks, technology is all built around and for the communities in which we serve. So yeah, you're going to have the business plan to the threat assessments and SWOT analysis and gap analysis, and you will get out so much more than what you put in to this program, but you need to do the work. And I think the ones that we have seen that have really seen a lot of success from this program continue to put in the work as if they were going through the program again and again and again, because you don't stop once you leave the program, right? The program gives you a skill set that helps you look at things in a very, I don't want to say pragmatic, maybe methodical way. And you continue to iterate upon that. But now you have the methodology and the tools for you to be able to test your hypotheses, to ask the marketplace questions, to look at the competitors, and to formulate opinions based off of analytics and data and factual, information versus your own assumptions, or maybe what your friends tell you they would pay you for, or maybe mom who's always going to encourage you and love you no matter what it is that you do.
Well, I love that you mentioned some of those tangible elements, John, a SWOT analysis, customer personas. I've been working with entrepreneurs for a long time now, and in the programs where I find most have, success is working together to set those goals. So if you are a founder coming to Collective, the first thing that we do with you is look at where you're at and look at where you want to be, and working together with you to make a tangible plan for your time together with us during that 12-week period. For some, you might need a SWOT analysis. For some, you might have done it. Okay, cool. You don't need to recreate the wheel. But we will have a checklist that we go through saying, you need a SWOT analysis, you need customer personas and avatars, you need competitor research, you need X, Y, and Z. We meet you where you're at, identify gaps in your current knowledge or in, again, those deliverables you need to put in front of investors. And then we work with you through that 12-week curriculum to make sure you meet those goals in your deliverables. But not everyone is going to have the same needs.
I want to point something out really quick, because you bring up some good points there. What the hell is an incubator?
Yes. Back up.
Because it's important to appreciate the stage in which where you're at right now. If you're watching this video and you're morbidly curious and you want to pursue something and you're kind of looking at it and touching with the 10-foot pole, I will say with absolute certainty that if you have an idea, you are exactly where you need to be in order to apply to an incubator. If you have a prototype, and maybe you have a couple customers, maybe you don't, but you're pre-seed, maybe you've raised a little bit of funds from family and friends because they believe in you, you're absolutely in the right place. Now, if you are averaging 500,000 to $1 million in annual reoccurring revenues, and you're looking to scale, and you've already kind of validated a lot of these things and done some of the groundwork, probably not the right fit. Well, right. I would encourage you apply so we can have a conversation. But I want to be very respectful of both of our times. Accelerators would be more appropriate for where you're at. So a Techstars or a Y Combinator would be the ideal target for somebody like you, or a Mass Challenge, right? Where they do take and they do have revenue requirements, as an example, in order to scale on more of a global kind of level, not just to validate how you feel about something in the marketplace to go build something extraordinary.
Well, and John, along those lines, and Paul, I'm going to tag you in here. I've gotten a lot of questions from people that say, well, I've been to business school and, I know how to create a SWOT analysis and I know all of this 101 stuff. That's great. I love that you know that. Have you done it in this field? Have you done it with your idea? Have you done it hand in hand with experts? And, Paul, when I have worked with startups in the tech space, 100,000 was the general litmus test we used. If you're pre-seed or, pre-series A, do you have 100,000 customers? Have you made 100,000 in revenue? But for you, Paul, what's that litmus test? Because you have a background in venture capital. When would you say a company needs to participate in an incubator versus an accelerator?
I'm a huge fan. I'm chuckling a little bit. That's the greatest debate of our time. Not the greatest debate of our time is what actually defines the startup and the stages we're at. That I'm a big supporter of Steve Blank's definition. Steve Blank has written some great books. Worth a quick Google search to get to know his perspective. He defines a startup as a temporary venture, and temporary doesn't mean what you're working on isn't going to last. A temporary venture, not a company, venture, a temporary thing that you're working on, in order to prove a business model, in order to figure out a new business model. A temporary venture in search of a business model is actually how he characterizes it. And I'm a fan of that because it weaves together a lot of what John was saying about ideas, and validating ideas and substantiating that people are going to pay for it. It weaves together a lot of what Lauren has been saying about the impact these things need to have, about being a little bit more outcome oriented. What do you want it to be? What is that going to look like in the future? At this point, we don't know. You don't know. You have an idea. You have a thesis. You have a theory. You may have something, right? You may have a prototype. You may have a little more than that. But it's that notion of proving a business model.
Yeah.
That is the subtle distinction. That if what you're starting has a very known business model. I want to start an accounting practice. Well, great. We know the business model for that, and that's pretty easy to stand up if you just do how they do that. But if we don't have a business model to just copy, if we can't just sell the same thing, provide the same thing, make money with it in the same way, cover all the costs in the same way that it's already being done, you have what we refer to as a startup. And so we're figuring out how to make that thing work. Hence, eliminating all of the mistakes. Hence, teaching and working together to not do the things that we've already proven don't work. Right? We don't want you to avoid or not do a competitive analysis properly, because we know that most startups fail simply because somebody else is out there
already doing
it better or faster.
That's right.
and if you're just doing that worse, well, you're probably just wasting your time, aren't you? Right.
You should go work for them.
Or go work for them. Right. So how do we find those things so that you can figure out what's distinct and different and compelling in your case and be successful with that? And in time, it's not a temporary venture anymore. It becomes an incorporated company. You transition it, you pivot it to a business or a company that then is an operating entity, and it's successful and it can get funding and employ people and so forth, as we've been talking about previously in this video.
So let's talk now about the investment that a startup founder would make to participate in Collective. What does the investment look like?
The investment is pretty simple. And Paul's going to talk a little bit about the warrant side of things here in a second. But it's $750, which is for the class and the materials. And we get 4% of the company in warrants. Actually, before we go into the warrants, we do have payment plans available. And we also do support, right? Especially for scholarship fundraising, for people that maybe can't afford it, or are, especially for POC, LGBT, right? Underserved communities, there are options there available for you. So definitely talk to us about that if that is a challenge for you. Definitely something that we're encouraging and we're constantly trying to improve upon. But the 4% in warrants, I know everybody gets hung up on that. So over to you, Paul.
Well, they get hung up on it because what the hell is a warrant?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
like a warranty, I get money back later.
Back up a second too. First, right? As a as a startup founder, that word investment is always an interesting word.
Sure.
Because you're investing in yourself, right? You're investing your own time, let alone the cost of something. Your own time, you're investing your reputation, you're investing your present opportunities. You're investing your future, right? This is going to develop something incredible for you, or it might not work out, right? That is an investment in and of itself. And so we've developed this curriculum, we've developed the resources, we've developed the network so that investment that you're making is not your own, right? That you're making an investment with others investing with you, right? That we're all putting the time in. This is a 12-week program, and we meet 4 hours every week as we go through the different subject matter in the curriculum.
Yep.
With teachers, with mentors that are available too, with us being involved. One of us, I don't remember if it was you or me, John, but at one point we calculated the hourly cost of this program, and it's $2 or $3 in terms of, if you're gonna pay for anything, because in some defense, yes, right, we've got licenses, we've got operating costs, we've got things that we're looking to make sure are covered in that fee. And that's the way to think about it. That there's a fee to cover this stuff. It's a few dollars an hour for what we're all working on, plus the licensing for all the infrastructure that we put in place, that kind of stuff with you. So there's a bit of a fee. You're going to invest, in addition to that, just so you got a sense for it, you're going to have to invest 10 or 20 hours at least in the amount of work that has to get done. Right? It is once a week that we meet.
Yes.
4 hours, and then a lot of work to get done for the next week in order to keep up and stay on the same track and same pace with us. So what's a warrant, and why is that in place too? Well, it's a means of doing a few things. It's a means of ensuring that everybody who's investing in this is indeed investing in it with you, right? That it enables all of us to benefit in and be committed to your success. That an investor is called an investor. Why? Because they put something into your company and they get something for that. Yeah. I mean, that's quite simply what it means, right? So a warrant is the what we get for it, really. But a warrant is not actually like an investor. A warrant is not owning part of the company. A warrant is not getting equity, if you're familiar with that term. Yes. A warrant is really an IOU. It's really an agreement for something in the future. Hopefully what you've caught on to is the fact that we're really focused on building founders, startups into successful companies. And so likely you need or want funding. Likely you need or want co-founders, partners, or employees. And so you're going to structure this entity in a way that it's got a lot of people involved. We want to be those people too. And so a warrant is a way to say that we're going to offset the costs. We're going to offset the investments by allocating to MediaTech Ventures this agreement that when the company is successful, and you raise capital, or you take it public. There are different ways that warrants get structured. When that happens, MediaTech Ventures can convert a little bit of that ownership into equity, and actually what you do is we just immediately sell it, because you sell it to the incoming investors, or you sell it to the public market if the company's going public. So it's basically just a way to kind of get paid in the future for an ownership of the business. And it's more of an IOU than equity, in the sense that what a warrant means is that while we have that kind of ownership and participation, we actually aren't in your day-to-day affairs as an investor would be. Yes. Right? We don't sit on the board, which is something we'll talk about when you come through the program. We explain them what that means. We're not actually investors that are looking for investor updates and saying, hey, we need you to do this instead because we own part of your company. We actually just have this promise that in the future, you're going to be successful. And when you're successful, we're successful. And we'll flip that in the future in a way that everybody gets paid a little bit more for it. It's designed to be this incentive that actually works both ways.
You mentioned converting. So to put it in kind of simple terms for people that might not be familiar with venture capital, or they've heard some of those terms, everyone gets scared about giving up equity, because equity for everyone means their stake in ownership and what they have a say in the company. We are not taking equity. A warrant is a long-term IOU that is a convertible note, meaning that our 4% IOU means that you're not paying us, your next round of investors are. We are converting that IOU that you're not giving to us in your equity, you're not giving to us in your, money that you've earned. It's when you have a Series C down the road, or a merger, or an acquisition, or a other successful exit,
IPO.
or IPO, yeah, successful exit, you go public, that those incoming investors then pay us. So
That's
you're
right.
not giving up a right for what you say in your company at all. You are making a long-term investment in your company, and so are we.
Yep.
We believe in you, and we want to see you succeed through pre-seed, through Series A, through Series B, because we want to see you get to a successful exit, whatever that may look like.
Yep.
And for some companies, it might not be applicable. Maybe a C Corp, legal entity structure isn't the best fit for your company. We're not going to force you into that. That's part of the journey we take together over those 12 weeks to determine the best business model, the best legal entity structure. So if you have questions or concerns about what warrants are and what they mean for you, talk to us.
So you touched on something really quick. I would strongly recommend, for what it's worth, everybody considers, and most of you will end up becoming a Delaware C Corp. There are many reasons why that is, and you will learn why throughout the program. In particular, it is the ability, and just take Delaware out of it, C Corp as an example from a corporation standpoint. When it comes to ownership, when it comes to shares, when it comes to these types of agreements, those conversations are much easier than other formations. But I won't get lost in the nuances now. Certainly stuff that we'll talk through with you during the program.
So let's bring this all together, guys. We've talked about a lot. We've talked about MediaTech Ventures, Collective. At the end of the day, we're here to support founders who are creating, launching, scaling, and growing media tech companies. And if you identify as one of those entrepreneurs, if you have a great idea and you're using media and you're using technology, we want to talk to you. We want to support you. So check us out. John, tell them where they can find us. Rather, we know where to find us.
And for 10 easy payments of $99.90. Now, so reach out to Lauren.
Yeah.
Lauren at MediaTech.Ventures. That's it. There is no .com. Important to appreciate that. And of course, if you just click on the link below, that'll most likely bring you right to her. You can reach out to myself, John at MediaTech.Ventures, or Paul at MediaTech.Ventures. And whether or not you're a part of the program, we want to know what you're doing, who you are. That's the important distinction of what we're building. We want you to be a part of our program if you qualify for it, but if you don't, join our community platform. Join our Slack community that's got over 500 people in it. There are things, we want to continue to create and perpetuate as much support around this industry as possible. This is one of the vehicles to do that. And we hope to see you in the many different versions as you continue to grow and throughout your journey. Thanks so much.
Thanks, y'all.